Hey, welcome today to Wednesday's live Freshworks livecast. We're live from Dreamforce today. I'm Parker Churn. I am joined with Nathan Latka. Nathan is a serial entrepreneur, best-selling author, and SaaS expert. And he actually grew his first business from his dorm room and grew that to $5 million before he was 21 years old. And before he dropped out, he did some more impressive things. He actually built that to 10,000 customers and a team of 20 people, including your professor.
This was the key point. You know, It feels very good when you hire your professor who basically was failing you, right? Because you're going, I don't want to study for this class, but my business is taking off. That's how it works.
Well, that sounds like at least it's some sort of business plan, and it seems to work out well for you. You're making the tour circuit these days, talking about SaaS and what's happening in SaaS. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well.
I think we should, that's a hell of an intro. We should stop right there, right? We should just end. It's not going to get much better, right?
Unfortunately, we have more time.
So Parker, everyone's watching right now. They're going, wait, I thought you guys are supposed to be on a blimp right now. What happened? Why are we not on a blimp?
Well, you know, we cannot account for acts of God. And we had high winds today, and blimps are finicky things. And if you get the winds too high, they simply don't want to be batted about recklessly. And so we decided that it was the best case was to stay right here with our feet on the ground. And so we're here live at Dreamforce, doing it from the 0-foot level instead of the 3,000-foot level.
And you guys know this, winds might change, but something that is definitely not up for discussion, it's definitely changing, is the trend towards more flexible software. People hate, hiring a ton of people to implement these large, slow-moving ERP solutions. So this is officially the SaaS Wars. We're live here at Dreamforce, but ultimately what we're going to be discussing is a bunch of different things. We've got a lot of great guests coming up. Parker, who are we going to be talking to?
Yeah, we got actually, I think first off, we're going to be talking to the CEO of Avocode. And then we're going to be talking actually with my boss, the CMO here at Freshworks. He's going to be talking about legacy SaaS and new SaaS. We're going to be talking about customer success. We're going to give everybody a chance to ask Nathan anything. If you have any pressing questions, go to your Twitter feed with the hashtag #AskNathan, and we'll pick that up. And then we're going to get to some talking points from you, Nathan, about what CEOs and SaaS companies should not do. What are the rules that are out there that they should not follow, the rules that are worth breaking? And then we're finally going to talk a little bit about the landscape of the customer service and success space.
It'll be a lot of fun, and there's a lot of trends obviously happening in the space, but I want you guys to know watching this isn't something where we're just projecting at you. Parker and I we're in the Twitter feeds. So if you use that hashtag #AskNathan or hashtag #SaaSWars or hashtag #Failsforce, we will see that and we'll respond to you guys live here. You're talking directly to us, right?
It's live and in person. We're right here at Dreamforce. I'm Parker Churn. We're with Nathan. I'll get that right.
Nathan Latka. Like Lathan. We're going to roll with Lathan.
Nathan Latka. And first up, let's just talk about a little bit about, speed and agility and the importance of that.
Yeah, well, one of the trends I'm seeing, I have a podcast where I interview software founders. And Parker, I've interviewed about 3,000 at this point. And one of the things I see to winning SaaS companies is they figure out how to get their design teams talking to their engineering teams in a faster cycle. The example is you talk to a customer, you do a demo on a Monday. There's a clear issue. A designer designs a solution. Can you actually get it to your development team and get it released before the next weekend? And whoever wins that race, that speed cycle really wins. And so one of our first guests that we're going to have on this live cast is actually a gentleman that launched a company called Avocode, which helps founders, design teams really pass off their designs faster and more efficiently to developers. So when we get the thumbs up from the crew that Envu has called in successfully, and when Envu shares his face here on the Zoom thread, we will start talking to him. But what are you seeing at Freshworks? How do you guys get products out quickly?
Well, what we do is at the basic level, we design for the end user. And so what we make sure is that we've done all the upfront work to make sure that products that we develop are designed with the end user. And what we look at is not only getting products out there quickly, but how quickly can they be used?
Mm-hmm.
You know, do they have to have a team of consultants to integrate? Is it too complex? Is it too bloated where the end user says, yeah, this is great for my manager, but maybe it's not so great for me. And so what we've done is really done a lot of development up front and research up front with those end users to make sure that when they get it, they have a easy to use solution that's simply powerful, works right out of the box.
So what was the last product? I mean, you guys have a lot of different products, which is a risky strategy because some of these products have multi-billion-dollar companies that are only doing that one thing, whether it's, you know, call center support or sales support, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have tools for all these things. What was the last product you guys released?
Well, the last product we actually are going to release is actually a product called Fresh Success.
Oh, this is an exclusive?
And well, it's not an exclusive because
Fresh Success.
We've already announced it.
Okay,
but if you want to feel like it's an exclusive for
Parker,
you,
we can't have it. It's your feed. I can't have an exclusive in your feed. That doesn't work, right? I mean, if it was my show, it would be an exclusive.
Fresh Success is actually our customer success product. What it enables is customer success teams. We're actually going to bring Craig Soules on later and have him talk about that. But what that does is allow customer success teams post-sales to better understand the health of their customers, not only from a customer level, but from an account level, so that they can better serve those customers.
Mm-hmm.
And then not only retain them for longer periods of time, but look for cross-sell and upsell opportunities. And some of the things that we're doing with that is we're integrating that into our full suite of products, customer engagement products. That includes Fresh Desk, Fresh Sales, and others,
mm-hmm.
Fresh Caller, et cetera, so that data is leveraged across the entire organization so that those organizations, those teams, can have one set of data about the customer and the account so that they can create and respond to those customers in a better, more aligned way. And that information travels with the customer and the account throughout the engagement and throughout the relationship.
Yep.
So the customers don't have to repeat themselves. They can they can get more information more quickly. And then down the line, we're going to be able to make not only ratings of how the customer health is, but actually look at recommendations for those customers.
So guys, we'll get to a bunch of these products as we continue this 90 to, we'll call it 100-minute telecast here. And I see your guys' questions coming in. Vishnu, you asked a great question on Twitter. You said, Nathan, how do you reduce churn in a SaaS organization? We're going to get to that in about 35 minutes when I start talking about 4 rules you must break as a SaaS company to help ensure that you are successful. We'll definitely talk about churn. And I'll tee that up with a quick question here. Is there any kind of situation you guys can think of where churn wouldn't matter? And the specific kind of pop quiz I'll give you guys is the following. If you have a company, right, you're building a software company and you are able to recover, let's say you spend $100 to get a customer and you get that money back on day 1. So it's an instant payback period, but their lifetime value is very short. They churn quick. Let's say they only stay for a year. Parker, the question is, can you build a successful SaaS company when churn is high, but payback period is very quick? We'll get to that later.
That sounds great. And we'll get to other of those Twitter questions that are coming in. I can see that they're coming in live right now. And we're looking for the CEO of Avocode. Is he on right now?
He's on. So Anbu, if you're there, share your video with us so we can see your face. I believe you're joining us live from I think you said Seattle. So share your video with us so we can see your face. And then I want to dive into the product and exactly how you've built Avocode to help designers communicate directly with developers. So once we get a thumbs up that Anbu was able to share his video so we can actually see his face, we'll jump into that. But again, you know, design to development, Parker, there's a lot of friction in most companies in that critical period. At Freshworks, what's that look like? How many designers, how many developers do you guys have and how do they communicate?
Well, we actually have a team of developers in India,
Mm-hmm.
and they work, of course, quite closely with the designers. And we're designing. We actually go to the end users, we follow the end users, we ask their questions so that we're making sure that we designed with them in mind, and that gets communicated to the development team. And it's a live communication. So we're actually able to get things up in real time in a very agile fashion.
Guys, we'll get back to Parker in a second. Anvu, how are you, man?
Hi,
All right.
I'm doing well. How about you? Thanks for inviting me.
We are doing well. So where are you joining from today? What city are you in?
So I'm currently in Seattle, and I only have a couple of minutes to chat because I'm heading to a meeting at Microsoft. So
okay, good. So what's your revenue? What's your churn? What's your valuation? I'm just kidding. Tell everyone what Avocode does.
You can find that on your blog. Yeah. So we essentially help teams move from designs to development significantly faster and more efficiently. And we're seeing that all of the companies are becoming software companies. They're building. Everyone is building software. So it's not only having an app or website is going to make these companies win, but the user experience, the design experience, say what's going to matter. And these companies have to innovate fast. So we help them go from design to code significantly faster. And we integrate with tools like Sketch, Photoshop, Figma, Adobe XD, and Illustrator. So we provide design, file backups, versioning, version control, developer handoff, collaboration, and all kinds of stuff like that. So that's
Anvu,
what we do.
Before Avocode, how are designers typically passing their designs over to the dev team to actually get it into the sprint cycle and get it released?
Yeah, that was very cumbersome sort of workflow, right? They created that in Photoshop, and then eventually they had to hand it off to developers. And what they basically did was just send the file to the developer, and developers were supposed to read the file or use Photoshop designers tools to get image assets. And a lot of time, designers also had to manually sort of redline design, so they make it easier for developers to get those data. And for us, it's just a matter of just uploading those files into Avocode, and everything the developer needs for coding is automatically generated from the design, because we read.
So just to be clear, there's a lot of these companies like Envision. You could argue it's kind of in this space now with their web editor. Figma just raised a massive round, and there's a lot of design teams using Figma to pass off. I mean, do you see yourself as a kind of a more lean, a more customer-centric version of a more kind of bloated, larger Figma tech stack?
I think what we're seeing is we're definitely not going to build a design tool, and what we're doing is sort of integrate with all of these design tools. So we're a workflow, collaboration between these tools, because we're seeing that XD, Photoshop, Sketch, Figma, they'll probably be fighting in the space, and there's not going to be one winner takes it all. And they're closing all of the ecosystem into their sort of silos. And what we do is we interconnect all of these tools in one platform.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. So you're going to kick their butt, right? You're going to win in the long run.
Yeah, hopefully.
Why are you talking to Microsoft?
We are they have a huge design team.
Okay, so they're not going to be an investor, but you're trying to sell to them. You're trying to get them to use your product.
Yeah, we also have our API that is very interesting. So from a perspective of their sophisticated, more advanced workflow of design. So API is something we're seeing that a lot of bigger companies would like to use.
I love that. Okay, take us home here. So how many customers, when you came on my show back in April of 2019, you said you were serving about 3,800 customers. What are you at today?
Yeah, we're north of that, almost double.
Very good. So you're going to make me do math very quickly. That would be about 7,600 customers right now. Is that accurate?
Close to that, but not there yet. But yeah,
you've got some time. If people are watching and they're watching in Twitter, they're watching from Freshworks. The whole Freshworks community is here. If they want to try your tool out, where can they go?
Just head to avocode.com, create an account. It's 14 days free trial. We have very, very affordable pricing plans, unlimited amount of users, and just use a product. It's great.
What can people start at? What's the cheapest price they have to pay to get in and just test it?
It's just $19, so it's very cheap, and they can start with 3 projects and see how it works with their team, and then if they really, really like it, they can upgrade to a higher plan.
Guys, there you have it. Envu, we're live here at Dreamforce. Ask us questions live using hashtag SaaS Wars. And one of the big wars we're seeing right now are great fast movers like Envu, building the, hustlers like SWAT teams, building these solutions that are working for teams that are really undercutting larger enterprise plays like Envision. So Envu, I'm rooting for you, man. Good luck at Microsoft.
Thank you. And thanks for inviting us. And I'm heading to Microsoft. Cheers. Bye.
All right. Good luck. Take care. Craig, what's up, man?
Thanks.
We're just going to go right over to you. So Envu, again, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Take care. What'd you think about that? Are you seeing a lot of, first off, tell us what you're working on at Freshworks. And then are you also seeing some of these patterns we just talked about where there's these point solution, fast moving, maybe even cheaper priced products really undercutting enterprise plays?
Yeah, so I'll take those in order.
Sure. Squeeze in a little bit. Get comfortable here. Yeah. And
So,
you make sure you talk to the microphone so we pick you up, I think, right? Yeah, just chat right into it.
All right. Yeah, so as people may have heard, I'm one of the founders of Natero, which was recently acquired by Freshworks back in May. And we work on customer success software. And so, I think one of the things we're seeing is this shift towards SaaS software eating up large portions of enterprise software, right? To your point. And we work with a lot of these companies. So what we're doing is helping people who are in a SaaS or recurrent revenue industry retain and expand their customer base by ensuring that they're getting value from the products they're buying, right? And so customer success teams are really focused on this, and we're software that helps those teams stay more efficient, stay more focused, understand the health of their customers, automation, all those pieces.
So real quick, just out of curiosity, all you guys watching on Twitter, leave a hashtag, use hashtag Ask Nathan. Just tell us real quick, if you guys have customer success reps or customer success teams, just type a number using hashtag Ask Nathan. I'm curious how many people are on your customer success team, and I'll check Twitter here and get back to you guys in a second. But what have you seen, Craig, be the best use cases of a team using you with maybe a customer success team of 5 people? How do they use Natero on a daily basis?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think especially with a smaller team, like a 5-person team, it tends to be the case that the customer success managers have a really large portfolio of accounts they're responsible for. And so, what happens traditionally is that you pay attention to the loudest, the biggest, the, most valuable customers. And there's a silent majority of customers that don't get the level of attention that they really need to see that value, right? And so the best cases for us are those teams where, they have high touch customers, but they also have this sort of long tail of customers that maybe don't get the level of attention that they really need. And they can use our tool to help them understand which of that long silent tail is actually in trouble. So that's step one, right? So using things like health scoring to understand what is the health of my portfolio? Are there customers that are maybe not getting value from our product today that I can engage with to use the product differently? The second piece is automation, right? So, alerting them saying, hey, these parts of your portfolio need more attention because of these reasons. Or even potentially doing direct outreach to customers saying, if you're a long tail customer who's, maybe not has a lot of value, but we can help you reach out to that customer based on their usage, based on their patterns, and say things like, hey, it looks like you haven't logged into the product for the last 2 weeks. Are you having some problems? Here are some articles about how you could be getting value. And so it's that mix of attention for the high touch and the medium touch, as well as automation for that medium and low touch. That I think are really the sweet spot for our product.
This is I think this is an opportunity. A lot of you watching right now, it's always the account executives that are in the middle of their day. If it's not at the end of the month when they have to get quota, they're hanging out on Twitter watching, a Freshworks live feed. So they're probably the ones watching. But it's funny, once the AEs typically close these deals, a lot of times they just get passed off to a customer success manager and they're essentially forgotten about. But one of the most powerful things that I did at my first SaaS company is we went into our billing platform and just did a full export into Excel and then sorted by customers who have paid us the most over their lifetime by the least. And it was shocking to me that some of these top tier customers, in terms of what they'd paid us, I hadn't talked to in ages. They were just kept paying us for 4 or 5 years, but I wasn't doing anything proactive to engage them. What I'm hearing you saying is you're helping people engage these kinds of folks, but not just your most valuable customers, even the long tail.
That's exactly right. And we're doing that with data, right? So I think one of the key things that we do is reach out to all the other business applications, right? So you mentioned, exporting your finance system. Fresh Success, when it launches in January under the sort of Freshworks umbrella, it can connect to a finance system and pull all that information in.
Is that Natero rebranded?
It is.
Basically,
yeah.
Okay, got it.
And so, one of the things that you'll see when you go into an account is you'll understand, like, how often are they paying us? How much are they paying us? What is their MRR? What does their billing cycle look like? When was the last time we reached out to that customer? Have we emailed them? Have we had a meeting with them? So it's that mix of information, right? Are they filing support tickets? Really getting that sort of full 360-degree view of each customer and understanding the context for that is really important, especially once you've got a signal that says, hey, reach out to this customer. The next question is, okay, why? What should I do? How should I reach out? When was the last time? Et cetera.
Yep. Guys, we're here at Dreamforce using the hashtag Failsforce and hashtag Ask Nathan. If you've got questions for Craig, who was recently acquired by Freshworks, specifically for his platform Natero, which helps you get more value out of your current customer base and will be rebranded and launched as Fresh Success coming up in January, you can ask him questions live using the hashtag AskNathan on Twitter. And you want to stay tuned. Coming up, we're going to dive into 4 things, if you're a SaaS founder, you should be doing that are not normal. You don't hear about these in blog posts, but you should be doing them to drive success. And we'll certainly touch on increasing and driving expansion revenue, which you can do once you drive and understand how to basically drive retention of these users. So that's my next question for you, Craig. When people are using Natero, can they actually define activation metrics and say who's ahead or who's behind? Is there proactive churn stuff they can do, or is it all really reactive? They churned, go get them back.
No, absolutely. Proactive is, I think, the name of the game here, which is why the data and the signals coming, in are so important, right? So, I mentioned connecting to business systems like the finance system, but we also connect to your product, right? And that gives you a lot of information about how engaged people are. And so if you start to see declines in usage, if you start to see people disengaging, especially from like key sticky parts of your product, that's a good opportunity to reach out. The flip to your point about revenue is also true, right? So if you see people who are really engaging deeply in certain key areas of your product, that might be an opportunity to say, hey, maybe we have another product that we think will cross-sell well into this. Maybe we see that that's an opportunity to expand in terms of the number of seats or the breadth in which they're using it or additional add-ons. So seeing those places where people are getting value today often gives you insight into where you could drive more value down the road. And that's where I think customer success and account management really need to work hand in hand to help those customers not just see the value, but get more value down the road.
Yep. And how, like, let's say people are using Natero or soon to be Fresh Success, and you have, the CRO, the chief revenue officer at a company saying, hey, is our success team working? Like, are they doing what they should be doing? I mean, what are the key success metrics for success teams, CSMs?
Yeah. I mean, the top line metric is always going to be retention, right? Net revenue retention is sort of the name of the game. It's why people are building customer success teams. And especially in a recurring revenue business like a SaaS business, net revenue retention is everything. So I think that's...
And explain the math behind that. If someone's watching right now and is like, they're a new SaaS founder, they don't know how to calculate net revenue retention. What's the calculation there? Make it easy.
So net revenue retention is really the question of, if I used to have at the beginning of the year a set of customers, and I have some amount of revenue coming from those customers, how much of that revenue have I retained by the end of the year? And then balance that with new revenue coming from that same customer base, right? So think of it as a mixture of both the loss due to churn, as well as the increase from upsell and cross-sell from that initial customer base. Right. So you don't want to include any new customers in that because that's obviously driving new sales. But anyone you had at the start of the year, the end of the year, what's the revenue from that same set of customers?
And give me a number here. What would you consider world-class in SaaS net revenue retention?
I mean, positive, right?
What do you mean? Well, you don't have 1% net revenue retention. You mean above 100?
No, what I mean is, so normally people think of it as like negative or positive, right? So negative would be that from that set of customers, you don't have quite as much revenue as you started the year with, even with upsell and cross-sell, right? Which isn't unusual, right? I think, there's always some amount of churn, and that's why you're trying to drive new business. But the best companies actually have more revenue at the end of the year from that initial customer base than they did at the start. Right. And even if they've lost some customers along the way, they've been able to drive more value for the existing customer base, which results in enough upsell and cross-sell to not just counterbalance that, but actually put you above on the scales.
Yep, guys, I'll catch that. So there's 2 critical metrics there you can track, which are actually the inverse of each other. Craig was talking about churn. The inverse of churn is retention. So you can have net negative churn, which means you are the cohort of customers from a year ago, you're upselling, right? And you're also not losing a bunch of them. Said differently, that could mean your net revenue retention is above 100%. Meaning if you had 10 grand a month in MRR a year ago, that same customer cohort, maybe you lose $1,000 of dollars, so you have 10% churn, but you expand that same cohort by 30%. So net revenue retention is 120%, and MRR from that cohort is then 12,000 a year later. Same page?
Yep, exactly.
There we go. All right, let's learn a little bit about you before we wrap up and move into the next section. So you launched the company in 2012. You raised, what, $3.5 million bucks-ish of traditional VC or debt or what?
Yeah, traditional VC, small seed fund, Maris Capital. And then we basically ran on that from 2014 forward. You know, the good thing for us is that customer success, even though it's a nascent space, it's a hot topic. You know, it's obviously a key revenue driver for SaaS. And so as SaaS has grown, you know, we were able to sort of ride that wave and get to revenue neutral pretty quickly.
Yep, guys, one of the questions we're seeing on Twitter, you can use the hashtag AskNathan, is the following. There's a lot of software teams that are actually giving this hasn't been done before really, they're actually giving their quota to CSM reps. So if a CSM rep is responsible for a book of business that's called $1 million, let's use 100 grand in ARR, that customer success rep is responsible for driving at least, call it 30% of expansion in that cohort, and they get quota upside for that. So true or false, in the customer base using Natero, one, are you seeing this trend of compensation for CSMs, having a portion of it be success-based, commission-based? And second, what other ways are you seeing the customer success role change over the past 2-3 years?
Yeah, good question. So I'd say we do see that. I think it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if you put more and more people in terms of trying to drive revenue from customers, you can reach a situation where customers start to lose that sort of trusted advisor interaction with the customer success rep. And so I think in the companies that do it the best, they've separated the account management role and the customer success role. Those people work hand in glove, but the CSM is more of the trusted advisor. The AM is responsible for actually driving the revenue to the finish line. And it allows the customer to kind of separate that, in their minds, is like, I can go to the CSM, I can trust that they're going to help me get value from what I've already purchased. AM is going to help me find new things that I want to buy. But I could imagine, more and more we are seeing some shared, goals there. I think, the biggest change in customer success has been the sort of separation of it from both support and sales. So I think when people started, customer success was either being born directly out of sales, right? Because of this issue, this desire to drive upsell and cross-sell, or it's being driven out of support where they're like, we need to get more proactive with our customers. I think now what we're starting to see is teams that are carved out from the beginning as being responsible for actually driving value. And I think there's a difference in mindset there. Like
carved out teams on the AE side, pre-sale, or post-sale on the CSM side?
On the CSM side, right?
Okay.
CSM teams are being created from the get-go with the idea that like their entire job is to drive value for the customer, right? As opposed to being support-oriented or sales-oriented, more just are people, like what the term is, right? Success. Like, are people being successful with our product? Are they getting the value that they believe they should for what they've purchased? Right? Because at the end of the day, if you've done that, then all the other good things will happen. The other last piece I'll say is I'm starting to see more and more CS teams focused on advocacy, right? So helping on the marketing side, right? So where support and sales seem to be the more traditional tie-ins, this idea of being able to drive, marketing value from your existing customer base, create advocates, create case studies, those kinds of things, is also starting to become something that CSMs start to help and drive.
So your story started in 2012. When did you sell to Freshworks?
Just this May.
Just this May. And was Amir's Capital happy with the sale?
Yeah, of course.
Were you happy with the sale?
Of course.
Were early employees that had a little bit of equity upside happy with the sale?
Yeah.
There you go. Craig, Natero, launching as Fresh Success in January, coming up here shortly. So be sure to check it out along with all of Freshworks' other products at freshworks.com. Craig, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Guys, you want to stay tuned. Coming up at 11:35 in about 2 minutes, we've got the CMO of Freshworks joining us, David Thompson. Now, David is a guy that has totally come from his own skin, which means I don't have to take it easy. So it's going to be a lot of fun. 11:35 coming up here shortly. In the meantime, I am on Twitter answering questions. You can use hashtag AskNathan. You can also talk to us using hashtag SaaSWars or hashtag FailsForce. While David joins me here and gets comfortable in his seat, I also want you guys to know I am putting up some data about net revenue retention in the Twitter feed so that you guys can see what net revenue retention looks like from a success perspective and what some benchmarks are. So What's up, man?
Hey,
Good to see you,
how are
David.
you,
Thanks
Nate?
for joining us. So
Good to
while
see
I'm
you.
while I'm posting this tweet, talk to the people. They want to hear from you. What does being CMO at Freshworks mean, and how long have you been with the company?
Wow. Okay. It means like amazing things. 2 years, just about coming up on 2 years at the company. And it means being part of taking the world by storm with a completely new generation of SaaS.
They can't. They want to make sure they can hear you too. So make sure you talk in the microphone. Even with all the look. And I'm a little uneven here. You know, these are like the power laws. You want to be the same. You want to be the same height.
Okay.
No, you're good to go. So okay, good. So you've been here. Sorry, I didn't catch it. How many years?
2 years.
2
2 years.
And where were you before Freshworks?
Oh gosh, where have I not been?
That's a dangerous question. Let's talk about that. Hashtag
Nathan, I like to say I'm a SaaS dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my friends call me the queen of SaaS. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I was there literally at the dawn of time with SaaS. I launched WebEx.
Okay.
The first
was that Eric Wande? Yeah,
company before Zoom.
Yep.
So Eric was like a lowly engineer when I joined as employee number 15 back in 1998.
That's like the year I was born. Just kidding.
Exactly.
89. You're good.
No, it's okay.
So 99. Okay. And where were you physically at this point, geography-wise?
So we were down in Sunnyvale.
Okay.
And I've always lived in San Francisco, so I had a nice commute down 101. So we launched, it was then called Active Touch, which I didn't like the name. So it came up with the name WebEx in the shower. It's like FedEx on the web. This was back when, you know how everything with the name coin in it now, you know, it
tends to do well. Yeah.
So back then, if you had web in your name, it was an automatic $100 million valuation. So we came up with WebEx.
WebEx was, this was just a startup though. You weren't public or anything.
I was employee 15.
Yeah.
I was employee 15 and Eric was one of the
was he nice? Did you give you equity that early?
Oh, sure, of course.
Okay, good. Just checking.
Yeah.
This guy, you got to figure out if he's a killer negotiator or not. All right, so you got some equity.
Yeah, so we got all that stuff under control, and then we went public in 2000 on $2 million in revenues.
So what was the day one market value or market cap?
I can't even remember. Several billion.
On $2 million in revenue.
Yes, because remember we had the word web in our name. Okay.
That's crazy.
So just think coin and think crazy.
Yeah.
Coin and crazy. Right?
So what happened? Did you cash out early enough to?
Well, I've been very lucky in my career. I'm not complaining. But what I will say is like that would talk about like a WeWorks moment.
Mm-hmm.
So like we went public and then the whole market crashed and we almost went bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to learn how to run a profitable business.
When did you realize that happened? Like where were you when you realized, oh my gosh, our stock's crashing and we could go bankrupt?
So it was like, so this was the year 2000. So the market went way up. We were almost going to go public. Then it went way down and it crashed and we didn't go public. And then it came back up. And then we went public and then it totally crashed for like 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during that 2-year total crash from end of 2000 to like 2002 that we thought it's all over. Like everything's gone to black. It was like 2008, a little mini 2008.
So guys, if you're watching right now on Twitter and you were also in a software company during this time frame, share your war stories, all your war stories from back then. Tell us what your stock price was at the height and what your stock price was at the bottom on Twitter. But okay, so you're at WebEx. How long were you at WebEx after 2002?
For 6 years.
So you left 2004?
Yeah, 2004. Started my own company. It was called Genius.com. Later we renamed it Lead Rocket.
Okay.
And we sold that to SAP eventually. Okay. Took a while.
What year was that?
2011.
2011. And did you bootstrap that company or did you raise?
Oh no, I raised $80 million.
Why'd you raise so much money?
Because it was easy times on money at that point. And we actually had a really good business for 3 years. We were an early Marketo competitor.
Okay.
And then we fell on hard times in 2008. So I've got all the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, really great times, really hard times as a entrepreneur. But what I've really been my whole career, Nate, is a marketer.
Mm-hmm.
Marketing through and through from the very early days of the internet to the birth of SaaS. And now I've probably worked at 25 different SaaS companies, either as a consultant or as a full-time CMO.
Okay, so I want to get up to speed where we're at now. So you sold, it was called Lead Genius. You sold it in 2012 to SAP.
Yeah, to 2011. It actually went through Calidus Cloud, which became SAP.
Okay, Calidus Cloud. And what did you, I mean, what scale was the company at before you sold it?
It was probably about 10 million.
In ARR. And how many people did you have on the team?
Well, so it went up and down. We had maximum about 180 people. And then by the time we sold, it was a small team.
Okay,
we pared it back.
Did you learn anything from that process selling?
God, yes.
What surprised you?
In selling?
Yeah, it's selling the SaaS company as a founder that launched a SaaS company.
You want to be in a good position to sell, not a bad position.
Were you in a good or a bad?
Not in a very good position.
And why were you in a bad position?
So we had run into all kinds of problems as a startup. Classic startup problems, right? We had product to market fit problems. We had macroeconomic problems. We had funding issues. And so, this is the typical
David,
sob story.
How can you say you have funding issues? You when you raised $80 million?
But it was after we burned through that.
Okay. So I mean, this is what I'm really asking as a company where you hustle from 2004 to 2012, you go from nothing to 10 million in ARR, but you raise $80 million. I mean, even if there's only even if investors get back just 1x their 80 million before the rest flows through to your teammates, I mean, there's a real situation where you sold for less than essentially what you raised.
Correct.
Did you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So would you do that? I mean, a lot of people are saying right now we're in a very fluffy market. There's people raising too much money. Are we?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, I think, we're in a bit of a bubble. Right. But I've always, besides my own company, I've always tried to align with companies that have like really good unit economics and an eye toward the bottom line. And that was true at WebEx. The reason we were able to save WebEx from bankruptcy is because we became profitable within a very short period of time. Right. Same thing's true here at Freshworks. We just raised a bunch of money, but the unit economics are really incredible. We have an eye toward profitability at all time while maintaining growth. And so if you can get that balance between really growing fast, which we're doing, 60% a year.
That's in revenue or customer count?
In ARR.
Okay, so it's real growth.
Yeah, it's real growth.
You get people all the time say, we're growing so fast, it's like no revenue.
No. This is real money we're talking about.
I like real money.
Absolutely real money. And with an eye toward that eventual profitability within, a few quarters, then you're in a very strong position.
Take us forward. So 2012, you sell. Do you have golden handcuffs? Do you have to stay at SAP?
No. I was out by then. I was raising my first child at that point.
Oh, how many kids do you have?
Just one.
Okay.
8-year-old.
Okay. I hear it's I don't know, but I hear it's a startup in itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's a tax deduction, right?
There's certain taxes, but it's that
you don't have
money,
kids for the tax deduction purposes. This is how I would do it, right? I'd have 20 kids. Give me all the tax deductions.
I got married for tax purposes.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because I've been with my husband for 35 years.
Wow. Okay.
And after year 30 and gay marriage was legalized, our taxman said, you really should get married.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay, maybe we should.
Well, take me forward. So speaking about marriage, when did you officially get married to Freshworks?
2 years ago.
Okay, so what happened between 2012 and 2016?
A whole bunch of consulting, working with Andreessen Horowitz, working with a bunch of VCs in the Valley, helping a bunch of companies, get their go-to-market strategy together, get their brand strategy together. Most recently, I was CMO at Domo, which was an interesting experience.
Why was it interesting?
Well, we had raised a lot of money. There was a lot of money on the table with a great product, an absolutely fabulous product. But over raising money is a problem.
How much did Domo raise?
I think probably in the neighborhood of like $700 million.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so, once you get up into those kind of nosebleed valuations with huge actual money in, it's, you know this better than anyone, it becomes getting to liquidity beyond those private raises, whether it's as a public company or as an exit, is super hard.
Did you do a secondary at your first company? So the 80 million you raised, was there any ever taken off the table by founders or at all to the balance sheet?
This was in the way before those days.
Okay, got it. Was there any secondaries done at Domo before the IPO?
I don't know. I was gone by then.
Okay, so you left. You were consulting there.
Yeah, I had started out as a consultant. I did a full-time gig, and then Freshworks came along and couldn't resist.
Who moves faster, Freshworks or Domo?
Oh, that's not even like a fair comparison. I mean, Clearly
Freshworks, or there we go.
Clearly Freshworks.
All right. Well, why is that? Like, talk to me about speed in SaaS and specific legacy SaaS, big, slow enterprise versus kind of new, nimble SWAT team, fast moving.
Yeah. Well, so that's why I'm here, to be perfectly honest. So having been around the Valley for as long as I've been around, seeing as many SaaS companies kind of come and go big or go out or go down or go sideways, you know, what I saw was this rush toward the enterprise, right? And, you know, Salesforce is obviously the classic example, but there's any number of them where you're trying to maintain your growth by going up market, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that model, but that leaves the long tail of the SMB under or not served.
Yep.
Right. And you look at Freshworks and you look at their SMB roots and you look at the simplicity, the beauty of their software, the instant on gratification, no problems getting it up and running, like literally in hours instead of weeks or months. And that's just a complete fresh breakthrough in the SaaS experience.
How do you deal though with, I mean, when I go to freshworks.com and I look at your product list, I mean, I can name companies in doing just one of the things that you guys do, and that's all they're focused on, teams of hundreds of people, billions raised. How are you able to get a product to market that you feel like can really compete with these players that are only doing that one thing?
Let's talk about the power of innovation in India.
Okay.
India like operates at a scale and operates in terms of talent and innovation, honestly, in a way that most people in the rest of the world have not even begun to understand.
Help us understand it.
So when you look at the number of patents, the growth in patents, the number of, you know, like just in Freshworks alone, our breakthrough innovations around omni-channel communications, around AI, around 360-degree data. These are fundamental shifts in the way products work and in the way data moves. And this is all coming through patented technology that is being developed at a pace and a scale. In my 25 years of SaaS, I have never seen it before.
But what is the Freshworks dev team in India? How are they operating that makes it move so quick? Is it kind of continuous integration? Is it 2-week sprints? How are they actually tactically moving so quick?
It's definitely agile.
Okay.
It's super agile, but the key to Freshworks is constant entrepreneurial renewal, right? So each product you know, is built on the same code base, right? And yet each product group is empowered to go after their own market and to go after their own competitive set while still being part of the overall platform. And it's that kind of product pod focus that gives it entrepreneurial life and energy.
So you see each of these, call it 16-ish products, right, with Fresh Success coming out soon, 12. Do you see each of them as their own little entrepreneurial kind of SWAT teams? They're building their own companies. In other words, that's how the team is set up.
So that's how the product team works, right? And that's how each of these products goes from being, like, we call them baby products, to a grown-up product. So you have, you know, Fresh Desk, which is our flagship product. It's well north of 100 million in ARR. It used to be a baby, you know, just some 8 odd years ago.
Yeah. Does Fresh Desk, I mean, Fresh Desk makes up more than, call it 90% of your revenue today. 80 to 90.
Yeah. It's definitely the line, let's call it the lion's share, but believe me, Fresh Service is coming on really strong.
Yep. This is
right?
your
ITSM
IT service
product.
Yep.
But the point of the matter is the products get, once they get big, once they get to a certain bulk, then they start cross-selling the other products. So our Fresh Desk products help sells the CRM product, which is Fresh Sales. It also helps to sell the IT product, the Fresh Service product. And so we start getting that synergy. And that's what we actually launched last week, was our platform, because this is the first time we've really talked in any great extent about the underlying platform that ties everything together.
Are we talking Freshworks 360 here?
So those are our bundles. That's like our kind of Microsoft Office bundles, but the underlying platform, we call it the Customer for Life platform.
Okay.
And that's that data model that gives you, you know, the full 360 on the customer view, from marketing, sales, support, and success. and also the intelligence on top of that to be able to make smart
This is
predictions.
this is a very hot space. Most people would call it kind of the term is CDF, the customer database, basically customer database, right? And everything, and you market out of that customer database. But one of the things that I see when I interview SaaS founders, I have a multi-product approach, especially with 12 products, is they believe that a lot of the growth is going to come from cross-selling products. When what they actually see happen is each product takes on a life of its own. There's actually very few customers that end up cross-selling. So of your total base, how many customers would you say use more than one of your products?
Yeah, so it's growing really fast. We don't publish those numbers publicly, but what I can say is we're doubling that number year over year.
Got it.
Right?
So today you only have 10 customers using more than 2. It'll be 20, and it's doubling year over year.
It's doubling year over year. And the point of the matter is that's part of our transition from being a pure SMB play to now what we call a twin engine model, where we're going after both mid-market and SMB. And this is really kind of one of the most interesting things about being a fresh SaaS player versus being a legacy SaaS. So what happens with legacy SaaS is they go after the big deals and they go after the Fortune 500 and they completely lose sight of the SMB, right? They start designing for the Fortune 500. They start organizing their entire go-to-market effort after the Fortune 500, and before you know it, they can't sell to the SMB anymore.
Well, let me role play with you for a second. Well, David, 1 out of 10 small or 9 out of 10 small businesses fail in 2 years. If we keep selling $20 a month plans, our churn is through the roof. We can't hire people. We can't invest in product development because they churn so much. We can't serve the SMB, so we're going to go up market and move enterprise.
That is true in the North American market. In the global market that Freshworks really operates in, you get operating leverage across the globe, right? So when you've got engineers in India, you've got salespeople in North America, you've got salespeople in Europe, you've got salespeople in India too, and you put that all together, and it allows us to easily serve the long tail of the SMB profitably, which is not true in companies that are more North America focused.
So thinking about this and how you split up the market, how would you personally define legacy SaaS, and how is this kind of fresh take on SaaS a better approach moving forward?
Okay, look, it's all about simplicity. You cannot sell to the SMB any kind of an overcomplicated, over-customized, over-architected product that requires, an 18-month implementation cycle and requires custom objects and custom workflows and custom coding in order to just put it in front of a user, right? That, in a nutshell, is how I would define legacy SaaS. And unfortunately, you know what I like to say about, companies like our dear friends at Salesforce? It's like you grew up to be like your parents, right? All of a sudden, you are Siebel. All of a sudden, you are Oracle. And it's like, is that really what I wanted to be when I grew up? And the answer is no, right? But I also understand, because of the unit economics of North America, because of the growth imperatives that VCs and markets impose on these SaaS companies, why they go to this kind of legacy approach to selling enterprise software.
So do you see across your customer base, churn is actually lower than what you see the data being in these regions where 9 out of 10 startups fail? In other words, if people use your software, are they less likely to go out of business?
If they use our software, they're less likely to go out of business?
So one way I like to measure up anyone selling to SMB is, what the average fail rate is of a small business, right? It's pretty high.
Yeah.
If you can look at your customer base as a cohort, a microcosm, and say, we're only churning X% annually of this base, and that's a lower churn rate than what the overall just SMB failure rate is, that's a good sign.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And so I take a lot of credit on the product side of that our product does help businesses be more successful, but I also take credit on the go-to-market side, right? So there's SMB and there's VSMB and VVSMB. And like, I'll be honest with you, we're looking at deals that involve usually 5 agents, whether it's support agents or sales reps or IT people or whatever the case may be. And so once you get to that level, right, you're talking $200 a month, $300 a month, $400 a month. the failure rate on those types of businesses is much lower than the VSMB space.
Yep, totally makes sense. Now, look, before we wrap up here, move into our next segment. Again, those of you just tuning in to Twitter, we're going to talk about 4 rules you must break to build a successful SaaS company, things that are not what you might think are traditional. So we'll dive into that in a second. But first, when I saw you guys launch Fresh Chat, I couldn't help but think, okay, you've got these guys Drifts, you've got these guys Intercom, you've got these guys, by the way, Olark, which no one ever talks about, but they were really first in the space ages ago. Bootstrap, built a $10 million ARR company and then got just destroyed by kind of Drift Intercom. You guys throw your hat in the ring. How do you have the confidence to throw a new product into that very competitive ring? And what's your mousetrap to steal customers?
Yeah, well, so first and foremost, it's about innovation, right? Like, again, I've been at this SaaS thing like more years than I want to count.
The queen of SaaS, I hear.
The queen of SaaS.
Is this tattooed on you? Is this tattooed on you somewhere? Don't tell me where, but is this tattooed on you somewhere?
Yeah, in a part that you don't want to know.
Next question.
And so my point is that I've never seen a company innovate as quickly, deliver product and product value as quickly as Freshworks. And the Fresh Chat is just a great example. I mean, we are killing it with that product.
Okay, define killing it though. What does that mean?
So I'm talking about, 300% growth, 400% growth year over year.
Okay, but David, going from $1 to $4 is 400% growth.
Yeah. Hey, you start out with the law of small numbers.
You can't use percentages though when you're launching. It's easy to just say 1,000% year-over-year growth. How do you know it's crushing it? No, from a CMO perspective, like how do you really know? Wow, this thing is working? Because
the growth at early adoption scale is very high. The customer count's going way up. But even more than the individual sales are the bundled sales.
What does a bundled sale mean?
So Fresh Chat with Freshdesk is the most killer support desk solution on the market. Move aside Zendesk, move aside Salesforce, move aside any other desk you want to talk about. You put Fresh Chat and Freshdesk together, and that crushes it in terms of user experience and in terms of customer experience.
Guys, we will let this debate roll over into the Twitter stream. There we have it. David Thompson got into this game a long time ago in '99 with WebEx. Obviously helped grow that company. Took a break between 2012 and 2016 as he did consulting work with the likes of Domo and saw what it was like to raise $607 million. But maybe product speed wasn't quite where it's at. When he came across Freshworks, he said, wow, this is definitely going to be a great fit. Joined 2 years ago. Now the company is scaling where they have their Freshdesk product alone doing more than $100 million in ARR, and these other products growing very rapidly. A lot of excitement as they wage #SaaS wars on old enterprise ERP. David, thanks, man.
Hey, Nathan, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Enjoy
Guys,
it.
Stay tuned. Coming up, we're going to talk about 4 rules you must break to build a successful SaaS company. And additionally, at 12:15, we're going to have Fred McClamish joining, who is a senior analyst at a research firm that you're really going to love. So we're going to dive deep into that. And one of the things I'll do while we wait for Fred to come in is I'll jump in quickly to Twitter and just look at any questions we've got coming in. So I see a lot of you guys asking great stuff. Cindy, we'll get to your question coming up. Beth Ann, great question on retention. Morali, I appreciate those questions again on conversion rate. People really loved Craig earlier. If you're just tuning in, you want to go back and watch the recordings because we had a great chat with Craig, the founder of Natero, and we talked about what it means today to build a successful customer success team. And you'd be surprised how many people are putting things like quota on their CSMs. Or you might ask yourself, how do I know if my CSM team is working? Or you just might be wondering, how do I figure out who my best customers are? What can I do more with them to then pass those tactics and systems on to our long tail customers to drive more success? So we're going to be diving into all of that. But one thing I want to talk about while we're waiting for all that is those of you on Twitter, you saw the chart I just posted on net revenue retention under the hashtag AskNathan. We're also under hashtag SaaS Wars and hashtag FailsForce. And one of the questions I had pop up is, Nathan, what's more important, driving more expansion or keeping churn low? And so this is a great question because net revenue retention is ultimately about adding those two things together. So Parker, if I asked you what's more important, keeping churn low or driving more expansion revenue, you had to pick one, which would you say?
Do I have to pick one?
You have to pick one. Keep churn low. Grab your mic. Keep churn. We got to put this on the record.
Really?
Keep churn low or drive
You're gonna tie me
expansion
down
or
to
drive
one, huh?
expansion revenue.
Well, I would always look at the customer and make sure that you're keeping churn low.
Keep 'em.
Because successful customers grow with you. We're looking at making sure that we add value for the lifetime of that customer relationship and providing products that do that. And so one of the things that we've really are excited about with all the products that we have in the Customer for Life cloud is that we're developing a product set and a platform that allows companies to better engage with those customers all throughout the life of that customer relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do that, you grow that business, as we all know, when you talked about it, your net retention, you grow that net retention, everything becomes that much easier. And not only that, you've got these great customers that are out there advocating on your behalf.
Good timing there. You're not supposed to stop talking right when I take this sip of
sorry,
coffee. That was good.
Sorry,
that was good. You put me on the spot. No, but guys, we're having a lot of fun here at Dreamforce, here at Freshworks headquarters. We're using hashtag SaaSWars, hashtag FailsForce plural, and hashtag AskNathan. Coming up at 12:15, we're talking to a senior analyst in the space. You're not going to want to miss him. Additionally, I'm talking about 4 rules you must break as a SaaS founder to build a successful SaaS company. For example, we'll talk about churn metrics and when does it make sense to actually ignore your churn. Number 2, when you're initially going to market, how should you price your product? Number 3, what's an appropriate amount of funding relative to how much revenue you currently have, and how do you make sure you don't get underwater? And lastly, what's more important, cash flow and being profitable, Parker, or driving growth? We'll talk about all those coming up. I'm going to go grab a refill on coffee while you talk to the audience and get some maybe AMA questions teed up. How's that sound?
Okay, we'll look at some of that. And
did I ruin your plan, or does that sound good?
You kind of ruined my plan.
Okay, wait, I'll roll with you. Go ahead.
You know what was kind of interesting is let's talk about some of those rules that executives ought to take a look at. You highlighted them now. Let's get a little bit deeper into some of those.
Which one? I'm always curious, kind of from an audience perspective, who's thinking about what. So do you think most people are thinking about, we're launching a software product, their founders watching right now, and they're trying to figure out pricing? Or should we focus on a later stage question, which might be profitability or growth?
Well, I'm a simple person. I always go chronologically. So start with the early stage, and then we'll get to the later stage questions maybe a little bit later.
Let's do that. So guys, we'll talk about pricing first. So I'm just going to turn this to you real quick. I'm going to put this up on Twitter so you can follow along. But this graph, again, I'm just teasing you because you can barely see this right now. But this graph basically is plotting initial price points from 3,000 SaaS companies. I'm putting it on Twitter right now. You can find it at hashtag AskNathan. We're going to talk about it. But one of the massive mistakes, Parker, that I see when folks go to market is they don't ask themselves a very simple question, which is, at the price point I'm thinking about launching with, how many customers do I think I can sign up? Mm-hmm. Multiply those together. And if that revenue number isn't a meaningful revenue number, you've got to change one of those things, your customer count or your price point. Which side do you think people make the most mistake on? Small market or too cheap or too expensive price point?
They probably drop their price too soon and don't focus on adding enough value to the market. So if you're looking at, and you know this better than I am, but if you're looking at the market, you got to make sure that you have products that provide enough added value to justify that price point.
Yep. And so did you guys ever do this analysis?
Did you agree with that?
Well, you can go both ways, right? So there are some people that say, I want to move total freemium, build 1 million people using this, and then figure out how to make money. And others go, you know what? These are typically agencies. They say, you know what? I only want 5 customers paying $100,000 on like a consulting fee. And then what happens is these founders productize that consulting with a tech tool.
So Nathan, let me ask you, if you had to choose one, Nathan Latka, if you had to choose one, what would you choose?
I'm a big fan that today I think distribution is more important than product. I think if you lock down distribution channels, you ultimately can put any product you want through those channels. Mm-hmm. So my answer to that question would be lock down a large and addicted, right, and an active user base and figure out how to make money on it later. Go for market share first. And
then with those startup CEOs out there, they're figuring out how to make that money later. What are the steps that you would ask them to consider? And is there a paradigm that you would ask them to lay out for getting to a solution for solving for X, so to speak?
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to do is, let's say we've got 1,000 people using our tool for free. And let's say that you want to figure out a way to generate $10,000 in revenue from those 1,000 users. Well, what you do is come up with a price point, let's say $100 a month, and then say, of those 1,000 users, which ones should I show the payment pop-up to? And the way you make the decision is on an activation metric, right? So I'll use FreshChat, for example. Now, I don't know anything about Freshworks' internal metrics, so I'm simply hypothesizing here. But let's say that Freshworks decided that once a customer had sent at least 20 chats via FreshChat, they are X% more likely to convert to paid. Well, you would test putting that payment pop-up when they hit the 21st chat, right? Hey, before you continue, put your credit card in here for the $1 trial. And so you then guess what you think your conversion rate will be at that activation metric. And let's say, so you guess 90%, but it only turns out to be 30. You know that maybe you have to move that activation metric up if you want that paywall to convert at 90%.
Right. What do you think are the mistakes that companies make along that way?
Well, so some of the mistakes people make here are they don't test pricing at all. It's kind of, pricing is not a crock pot. You can't set it and forget it, right? You need to go in and actively be testing your pricing weekly, monthly, if you, obviously try not to do it only once a year. But there are people like Mathilde at Front App that actually their pricing page is dynamic. It changes every 3 weeks. I don't know if you know, have you used Front App before?
No.
Great tool, but they're doing very well. She's killing it because of this dynamic pricing. So don't make the mistake of not testing your pricing frequently.
Why don't CEOs or organizations test more frequently? That seems like that would be an obvious thing to test for.
Well, opportunity cost. We all have team members around the office. We all have sprint cycles and new designs and customer support and who's managing social, and it just falls by the wayside. But one of the most important things you can test is pricing. I mean, I did this, this is not software, but I did it with my magazine. And I said, you know what? We're giving this magazine away for basically $6. And one day I wrote an email to my list and the subject line was most expensive magazine in the world. And I increased the price to $29 a magazine. And our sales on that email blast were almost 15x anything else, just through my price test that I want to just test quickly. So you can really uncover significant gains by just testing some pricing.
Absolutely. So are you still at $29?
We are. It's $29 an issue, and it goes out now to about 20,000 software CEOs every single month. So
love that. Congratulations.
Yeah, we're having fun with it. We're having fun with it.
What other rules?
Don't ask me any tough questions, otherwise I'll put your face on the cover of it.
I don't think I'm.
Who is Parker?
In fear. There's no fear of that. There is no fear of that, but I appreciate
the
that.
The SAS expose inside, page 16.
My question to you is following up on that. So we talked about rule number one. What are the other rules that SaaS companies should look at to follow as they grow their business?
Yeah, so we just heard David talk about this with his experience at Genius and then Lead Genius, I believe he said, is you really as a founder,
Lead Rocket.
Lead Rocket, yeah. You don't want to raise ahead of your revenue.
Right.
So what I mean by that is a lot of SaaS companies, let's say they're doing $500,000 a year in ARR, they'll go out and raise like $5 million, and then they will never catch their ARR, their annual revenue, up to the total amount they've raised, the $5 million. And as a founder, that's bad. You have no leverage there. VCs will add things like liquidation preferences, like ratchet clauses. And then you end up, what happened to David happened, right? They raised $80 million with only $10 million in revenue, but no one sees any money because the investors get their $80 million back. They sold for less than what they raised. So you always want, in my opinion, to raise behind your revenue, not in front of it. And what that means is try and never raise more money than what your total ARR is at that point in time.
Okay. So that seems like a growth strategy.
It's just a smart strategy if you're a founder that's building a company because you want to get rich.
Yeah. So we got.
That's okay, right? You're allowed to get rich, right?
I think in a capitalist economy, that's perfectly acceptable.
I love money.
Yeah, exactly. I would expect nothing else to come from the lips of Nathan Latka. So we got 2 rules. We got a third rule we're looking at. What's the third rule?
Yeah, so the third rule, well, so we talked about pricing. We talked about funding versus revenue. The other 2 that I want to talk about are churn related and cash flow versus growth. So let's start off first with churn. A very interesting example of churn is a company that I interviewed that has a lot of the same culture as Freshworks called Madwire.
Okay.
And it surprised me because they're doing, have you heard of these guys before?
Yep.
Small company in Denver in terms of like no one knows about them, $100 million in ARR, bootstrapped, basically 7 million raised, but basically bootstrapped. And he told me, he said, Nathan, our churn is like 60% annually. Now, when you guys hear 60% churn, yeah, I mean, you think, ooh, that's like not great.
Well,
but
in fact, scary.
Yeah, it can be very scary. But here is what JB Kellogg told me. It's a father-son team that run it. He goes, Nathan, looked at me in the eyes like this on the Skype interview. And he said, when we sign up 100 customers last month, we know that 60 are going to churn after the first year. In fact, we know in the second year, another 30 of them are going to churn. So 90% of that cohort will be churned in the first 24 months. But here's what surprised me. He said, of the 10 that make it past year 2, they will stay for 5+ years easily. And their lifetime value and cash flow makes up 4 or 5x the combined churned revenue from the initial 24 months. So it works out for him because he's not spending a ton on CAC to get the original 100 customers.
Sounds like they need a better lead scoring algorithm.
Potentially. This is a whole thing about like, do you guys have a product that does that?
Sure we do.
Oh, what's the
Fresh Marketer?
Fresh Marketer.
Go out there and buy it.
I tee this. I get an affiliate commission for this stuff. No, I'm just kidding. But there is something to say that, right? You can either tighten your top of funnel and only accept leads that you know are going to convert. Right. Or if you're not sure what your conversion metric, your activation metrics are yet, you keep a wide top of funnel and trust that you'll find the 5 or 10 customers that are going to stick for 10 years.
Right. So he's retaining 10%. No great net retention here, but he's making sure that that lifetime value of that customer is far and exceeds what the cost is of acquisition.
So summed up, kind of like you just did it, it's the difference between logo churn and revenue churn. So over the first 24 months, he will churn 90% of the logos. But if you measure the revenue of the 10 that stay, the net revenue retention year over year is like 130% because the upsells on those 10 customers make up for the 30 or 60 or 90 churn.
And that's a nice metric.
It's a very, very nice metric to have.
Yeah. So we've got 3 down.
Yep.
What's the 4th one?
So last one is cash flow versus growth. Now, one of the questions you guys always get asked when Girish is doing these kind of interviews is, when are you going to IPO? And one of the key metrics that a lot of these companies look at pre-IPO is called the Rule of 40.
Absolutely.
Are you guys looking at this internally?
Well, you always got to keep an eye towards profitability and growth. And as you know, the Rule of 40 is a rubric around that.
Well, so this is something that we take for granted because we think about it all the time, but a lot of people don't understand how it works. How would you describe the Rule of 40 at a high level?
Well, it's just balancing off profitability with growth. That's how I would describe it. How would you describe it?
Yeah. So basically the way I look at Rule of 40, there's a lot of companies that will come on, they'll talk to me on my podcast and they'll say, Nathan, the reason we're burning $1 million a month, actually Dialpad CEO just came on my show. I don't know if you guys do you have a point solution that competes with Dialpad? Do you know?
I'm not aware.
It's a call thing.
Yeah.
For salespeople.
Yes, we do.
What's it called?
Fresh call.
Fresh call. Okay, there you go. Another example here.
Everything's fresh here.
Yeah, everything's fresh.
Fresh.
Everything's fresh, including this great looking comb over. Before we get to my comb over, going back to Dialpad, I mean, he says, Nathan, I'm burning $1 million a month, but our growth is 60% year over year. So when an entrepreneur tells you they're burning to drive growth, the way to actually measure, are they burning in an intelligent way, is the Rule of 40.
Right.
And any of you can calculate it. Here's how you do it. Here's the quick math. You take let's use 2019 since it's almost done. Look at all the money you burned this year, net burn, right? Net burn, meaning after your revenue, right? So take your net burn, and let's say it was negative 30% EBITDA, something like that. Mm-hmm. But you grew 60% year over year in terms of revenue. 60% minus 30% is 30. So your Rule of 40 is 30, which is below where you want to be. You want to have your Rule of 40, again, be above 40. And the reason that it's called that is because currently, as of last week, 83% of publicly traded SaaS companies' market cap are in companies where Rule of 40 is greater than 40. And those under Rule of 40 only make up about 20% of total market cap in, again, publicly traded SaaS. So Rule of 40.
Not great odds there.
Not great odds. You want higher than 40.
Okay, next up, we got Fred McClymonds coming up. He's the senior analyst at Futurum Research. We're going to talk about SaaS trends, talk about a little bit about the research that we just conducted around AI and the hype around AI, and we'll be talking to him in just a second.
That's great. While you're chatting and talking him up, can I go get a coffee refill?
We can do that. Do we have Fred coming up? Okay,
yeah,
let's get Fred up there.
So
let's get you some more
tell
coffee.
These folks about, because a lot of people don't understand how the analyst world works, but a lot of these Gartner, Forrester, Fred, these analysts control a lot about how SaaS is purchased. So why don't you, while you're teeing Fred up, maybe talk to the people about how he does what he does and what he does, how he analyzes SaaS companies.
Quite frankly,
yeah,
you get that coffee.
All right, there you go. I'll be right back.
Careful of your tether. We don't want you.
What am I tethered to?
You're tethered to the microphone.
Oh, my bad.
We don't want you to lose that. But do we have Fred live here? Let's get Fred up. Fred, if you're on the Zoomcast, welcome. Glad to have you here. And as I said, Fred's an analyst. The analysts are vitally important to any company that is looking for insight into the categories in the SaaS world, but all technology in general. And they often work with companies and vendors on both sides, companies who need to navigate and find the correct solution for them. And then obviously the vendors who are companies like ours who want to get in front of prospects and get in front of prospects that are looking for solutions where we can help out. And the analyst community helps us with that. It obviously shines a spotlight on appropriate solutions. There are a variety of analyst firms out there. And those firms range from the very large to Gartner and Forresters of the world, who work with literally tens of thousands of customers to help them navigate through their technology selection process, to the more independent or smaller boutique analysts like Fred McClemens at Futurum Research. And we're going to be talking with him shortly. Do we have Fred up on the Zoomcast right now? Fred, you there? Okay, we're still waiting for Fred. And we're looking forward to talking with Fred about the SaaS trends here and what's going on with AI and the future of AI, and looking into kind of what the current benchmark is for AI in SaaS companies, and the benchmark for legacy SaaS versus fresh SaaS companies, and what needs to happen in the future, what customers are thinking about right now, and kind of where their pain points are and what customers expect. And we're looking to having Fred currently, looks like he's coming up right about now, to talk about that and to talk about SaaS trends in general. So,
yes. Can you hear me now?
Hey, Fred, yes, I can. Good to see you again.
Excellent. Likewise. How have you been?
We last saw each other in Las Vegas.
That was correct. Yes.
I hope you enjoyed your time.
I always do. Las Vegas is one of those unique places that it's entertaining and it's just enjoyable.
Great.
For a week, and then I'm done.
For a week. I'm usually I'm good at Vegas for 2 to 3 days, and then I got to check out and go to find myself some nature. But it was great to have you there. We had you there and a cadre of other analysts, and I have to say we had a lively discussion on a variety of subjects. But let me just kind of kick this off with you right now, which is, what trends just generally in the SaaS space, what trends are you seeing right now? What are the hot trends out there?
Sure. But before I get into that, I thought we were going to be on the blimp today. So
we were going to be awesome.
My AR blimp gear. It's
yes. Acts of God got in the way. We had high winds, unfortunately, out here in California. And so the blimp while it is a great vehicle and a very visible vehicle, it doesn't work so well in high winds that gets where it is at the mercy of the prevailing winds. So we had to look at that, and we're looking forward to actually getting the blimp up later today.
Right. So back to the SaaS issue.
Yes.
Here. I mean, it's kind of an interesting question, because when people think of SaaS, they typically they think of SaaS just kind of as it's always existed there. That software as a service model, while it's been around for a while, it's evolved. It's changed, right, considerably. And in the SaaS space, we're kind of at a point now where a lot of the early applications that were offered in the SaaS space, in fact, I brought one to market decades plus ago, very early in that window. Those applications were really applications that were, kind of ported from the enterprise space, from the data center into the cloud. And for a lot of companies, it was good. It was better than what they had, but it wasn't really, kind of that true getting all the value of SaaS capabilities out there. So we're at that point now where, SaaS is well into, call it the SaaS 2.0,
right.
Call it the native cloud SaaS or native SaaS.
We're calling it legacy SaaS, maybe.
Yeah, well, you have the legacy SaaS, and then you've got the, the native cloud-born SaaS out there, which can be a lot more SaaSy than the legacy cloud or SaaS out there. But what you're seeing now is applications that are truly built for that cloud environment, for that SaaS model, and for the type of business structures and operational structures and consumer patterns and preferences, so that we're actually getting some really significant value today compared to what we were, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago.
What's driving that value exchange?
Oh, that's a great question, because it's so dependent on the type of application that you're running, the consumer base, the customer base that you're trying to target there. But by and large, if you think about the SaaS model, it really is sort of that ultimate, let's just do away with all the old CapEx, the capital expenditure models. Let's go straight into an OpEx model. Let's provide a lot more flexibility, a lot more agility. Let's put a consumption and a compensation for consumption model, or a pay model in place that can be flexible, that can scale up, can scale down, can scale sideways based on what a particular enterprise is trying to accomplish today, with the flexibility to change that tomorrow if they need to.
Right. Well, I'm going to introduce you to Nathan Latka. He's back after his coffee break. Nathan, Fred, Nathan, we've been just starting on a conversation about SaaS trends. As you know, Fred is the senior analyst at Futurum Research, and he's been looking at not only the trends, but the trends in AI, and looking at some of the research that actually Freshworks just commissioned recently.
Very good. Well, I have to tell you, Fred, anything that Parker told you about me that was nice is completely and totally true. Everything else is total liar. So
shockingly,
that's funny. By the way, I'm glad you got your coffee.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Look at that.
That
I want a
is
mug.
very nice.
Where do I get a mug like that?
I'd like to thank you for the branding experience. Yes, yeah. Turn it around.
There we go.
You got Freshworks as well.
Well, and I tell you, I'm not going to spoil it by pouring this Bang energy drink into it.
Yo.
Okay. Well,
like a true analyst. So, Fred, one of the things I'm curious about in terms of what you're seeing on the AI side is, I mean, I'm an LP in a ton of different funds, and you're seeing in every single pitch deck today, there is some mention of AI or machine learning. And, a lot of it is not actually AI or machine learning. It's basically VBA code and Excel on steroids, right? So where are you seeing real applications of AI in a SaaS model adding real value to customers?
Well, if you think about AI, and you're right, the definition of AI itself is not something that is universally understood. I sat on the executive committee of an early AI conference back in the around 2010, 2011 timeframe. And even back then, defining AI was a challenge. Today, most people still don't quite understand the nesting aspect of AI. You know, you've got, for most business applications, you've got the artificial intelligence name out there, but then underneath that, you've got machine learning as a subset. You've got deep learning as a subset. You could probably classify things like the smart chatbots and rule-based systems, and even RPA, intelligent RPA, underneath that that umbrella there.
What, Craig? Sorry, Fred. What's RPA?
Oh, sorry, robotic process automation.
Okay, there you go. See, you're way smarter than me.
Yeah, RPA is a really nice way of automating basic simplistic tasks that, you know, users perform every day. You know, think of it as sort of a macro in an Excel spreadsheet on steroids with a specific business target for that. So one of the challenges that we see is, you know, in that definition of AI, what really is AI? We see a lot of companies out there branding everything as, we have AI, here's our AI solution for this. But at the end of the day, it's not necessarily that tool that's branded as an AI tool in there. It's what's the real value that artificial intelligence, through, you know, machine learning, through deep learning, through predictive analytics, is actually providing in that application. And the beauty of a SaaS model is that an enterprise doesn't need to really understand how AI is working within their tool, within the platform or their solution that they're using. All they really need to know is, can I get value? Can I get benefit out of that particular tool? Is it making, so Fred,
where is the AI play? When you look at all the CRM stuff that you've studied, where is the artificial intelligence play in what we would traditionally define as a CRM platform?
Sure. Well, within a CRM platform, there are a number of areas where you can inject elements of AI or smart technology. That could be something as simple as a chatbot that is designed to provide not just suggestions, but you know, education and long-term recommendations that are based not just on what a customer support rep may be asking at the time, but what they may have asked historically, or what other support reps within an organization may have asked for. You can see artificial intelligence making its way into customer success applications. You can see it into, from an aspect of predictive analytics, helping you know, sales reps and support reps identify customers that are right at the point where a decision is ready to be made, or at that point where support may be required. Something along those lines there. So basically the idea of taking AI and leveraging the machine learning aspects and predictive analytics to allow, you know, a CRM user to be more proactive, to be more on target, more effective, and more efficient. It's a lot more than just automation and suggestions is the basic way of saying that.
One of the friction points, though, on teams adopting at a large scale AI or machine learning is any platform that does a good job with those two things has to start off with a representative sample size to train the AI or the machine learning. So if you put junk in, you're going to get junk out. How are you helping, or who are you seeing is doing a good job of making sure the stuff they put in is a good thing to actually have the AI run around and learn from?
Well, you know, that's an interesting challenge for a lot of organizations, because it comes down at the end to, you know, what is that enterprise customer, that brand, that organization out there? What's the data set that they actually have access to? And then how effectively or efficiently can, you know, the SaaS tool learn that? You know, I will say, based on what I've seen at, you know, past events and talking with consumers, yeah, I'd say Freshdesk is actually doing a pretty good job of embracing AI and working it into the system in a way that actually provides, you know, some relatively quick data points to value.
Well, what is the impact there, right? I mean, you talk about artificial intelligence versus artificial impact you know, on freshworks.com/AI report. What is the impact that you see this actually having on users?
Well, so let's separate out two different groups of users here. You've got a brand's or an enterprise's users or consumers, their customers, and then you have the individuals, you know, CRM users, customer support users, customer success users within an enterprise. From an AI perspective, the experience that the customer receives when they engage with that brand, with that enterprise, should be more frictionless, should be more proactive. And should be more attuned to their personal needs. Within the enterprise itself, what that means is the ability to actually handle a greater volume of calls into a call center or into a support center with an existing number of staff, because they're more informed, they're intelligent about what's taking place, and they can make predictions, not just about an aggregate group, but about specific individuals within that organization. From a CRM sales and marketing perspective, it means
well, Fred, hold on real quick. Let's actually talk about Freshdesk, like a real example.
Okay.
So, I mean, can you name a customer, do you know what that using Freshdesk, and can you maybe explain how they use some form of AI and machine learning to move from one success rep handling 100 calls per day to one success rep handling 300 calls per day? So you've 3x productivity.
Yeah. So actually, we spoke to a number of Freshworks customers at the Refresh event in Vegas. I'm not going to name names on this. I don't think that's fair and equitable to everybody that was out there for this. We did talk with customers that were specifically looking at things such as the chatbot area, making their sales organization more effective and actually treating the application as a learning experience for there. Some of the people that we spoke with there were, easily seeing, not just, single digit improvements, but double digit improvements in terms of productivity and the ability to train users moving forward.
Measured by what though? That's what I'm getting at. Is the productivity gain specifically in the Freshdesk product inside of these customer success teams literally call volume handled per day? Like, what are the success metrics?
Well, that's going to vary based on the type of organization. If you're in a CRM space, you're going to look at how many targeted leads can we address within a specific given of time? What's our success rate in reaching out to an individual? If you're on the support side, it's how many or how quickly can we actually address and understand and resolve a customer issue. So it's coming in. It's
really call time. If pre-Freshdesk call time average is a minute and 30 seconds, it goes down to 60 seconds.
Think of it as call time, number of calls, and then the satisfaction per call. So you can very easily measure what's the satisfaction that an end consumer is getting through a particular platform or a particular solution there. And you want to maximize for those three areas there. On the CRM side, on the marketing side, it's, how much more effective can your targeting be within your market base, within your CRM database of users. So there it's how quickly can, or, I think more appropriately, can we increase, open rates? Can we increase response rates? Without increasing staff, without increasing cost, can we actually get more value out of the team that we have for that?
Yeah, I mean, the struggle I have with AI and machine learning is it's kind of like a hammer, right? It's a great tool. 20 years from now, everyone's going to use it. But some people are going to try and hit a nail in, and they're going to hit their thumb and injure themselves. And others are going to nail 100 nails a minute. They can only use to do 10 nails a minute. Well, the genius around AI and machine learning is actually who invents the creative ways to use it to increase productivity, right? And so like you just gave examples, which maybe we see in Fresh Marketer, which would be like email open rates or things like that. Sure. But what are some creative solutions you wish existed around AI and machine learning in this space that don't currently exist?
Boy, that's a good question, kind of putting my hat on, down the road a bit here. If we look at AI, the number of enterprises out there that are, enterprises and brands that are currently investing in AI as a way to offer support, as a way to improve their sales and marketing tools, even as a way to increase chatbots. It's on the order of at least 2/3 of the organizations that we routinely survey say, yes, we're trying to invest in this. The challenge for them is where do we invest? And I think there are a couple of areas that you can kind of look at. One is on that internal CRM user or that support user. Do they have the tools to make them operate more efficiently? And we can measure efficiency, of an individual and their performance. We can also look at their ability to, in a very more accurate way, provide, targets and revenue goals, et cetera, things that allow them to predict their deal flow, their revenue flow coming into an organization.
So Fred, Parker's got a question for you on leveraging this kind of stuff across teams.
Parker, there's a couple of questions I have, which is, from your perspective, what do end users, what aren't they getting that they really want from AI? What's their expectation? I mean, we saw a lot in the research around dissatisfaction,
Yep.
around the use of AI, not providing enough value for the money. What's it going to take for end users to see more value for their dollar?
Well, if you look at the research, and we talked about this in the press release on this, you've got, I think it was close to 3/4 of the users out there saying they're willing to switch their CRM solutions in order to get the value of AI. At the same time, I think it was, less than a third, maybe 25% that could actually identify, what value they were getting out and what features they were getting out of it. And I think that kind of highlights a very interesting, situation or an opportunity here, perhaps. I think the way you achieve success through AI is that you use AI in a way where you're not telling somebody, now you're going to use AI. Because as soon as you start to call AI out as an explicit tool, here's the one tool that we have that offers AI value, all of a sudden the focus is on that tool and how do we measure that one tool? And psychologically, there's an issue of, here's another thing that I need to add into my learning kit. Here's another tool I have to master. And by the way, people don't inherently trust AI. So you've got this whole issue here where a lot of people say we want the value, but we don't necessarily trust it. And I think the answer to that is to not sell AI, but sell the value of AI. Sell the features and the performance that your platform offers, rather than the individual, here's a hype name now that we're going to use today, and here's another hype name that we're going to use tomorrow for that. But really focus on the value. And for CRM users, that's accuracy. It's removing friction from the play, and it's allowing them to perform at a higher rate, higher performance level in the same amount of time, or even potentially less time.
Yeah, we saw a lot in the research about the value, and in fact, the trust rates from end users is actually quite low. Only around 9% actually completely trust AI. They actually trust their gut more than they trust AI. What's it going to take to reverse those numbers to get 91% trusting AI?
Well, I think you have to, again, approach it from a perspective that says we're not trusting AI, we're trusting the system. We're trusting the provider and their ability to provide a SaaS solution that runs across my enterprise, that deals with just about every aspect of customer engagement that you can imagine. And it performs well and it is reliable. We don't have data breaches. You have to be secure. You have to be accurate. We can't have, false projections. Hey, here's our run rate this month and we're off by 30%. What did we do wrong? It has to be in that end value that is perceived there. And, if you're just trying to inject AI tools into little tiny spot areas, I think you're going to miss that value. Again, recognizing that most people, when you say AI, they're not necessarily going to be able to differentiate between a machine learning algorithm, between deep learning systems for unstructured data within their CRM. They may not understand that predictive analytics is going to fall into that umbrella. And they may not even realize that chatbots that learn from the user's actual interactions are part of that AI umbrella there as well. So I think it's value that you can offer first.
Exactly. It's one of the things that we've seen here and that we're looking to address, which is AI often tells you what has occurred versus what should occur. So what do you think about where we are in the AI with legacy SaaS systems? About where are we? What's the status, and where do you think that SaaS SaaS systems in general, and how does AI better inform these the software so that individuals, companies, business users can go from just getting a rating to actually taking a next step recommendation?
Yeah, so we can kind of break that into a couple of different pieces here. Let's think of it first from a practical application perspective of AI or any new technology into a software stack. go back to the to the purchase software, the CapEx model, adding any new feature in there, adding any type of data collation, data scrubbing, data analytics. That's a whole new software module that you have to somehow bolt on. And when a lot of the legacy SaaS apps were ported over to the cloud, they had that same issue. They weren't necessarily designed and optimized for the modern SaaS and cloud-based architectures, which in many cases can be a hybrid cloud offering. It can be a multi-cloud offering. It just wasn't taken into account there. So we're kind of at that point now where it's a lot easier for native-born, SaaS software providers to implement these new features behind the scenes, where it doesn't necessarily need to impact, customer training for that. The second thing is organizations that can consolidate their data into, a single source of record or a single source of truth, something that kind of says, here's our repository of information, and it's common across all of our different customer, facing operations. If we can do that in a secure way, in a nice, tight, integrated way, all of a sudden we have more value, and the analytics that we put on that value or on that data can be shared more, more proactively and more widely throughout an organization. So that's where I think you kind of get to the ultimate point here, is allowing, consumers through tools in the background to, actually be just much more accurate and efficient, and to get to the point where let's trial this for a while. Here's some features we're going to add. Let's benchmark these against our existing tools. And when we're comfortable, maybe it's 3,000, maybe it's 4,000 records down the road. It doesn't take a lot to train some of the machine learning systems out there and the predictive analytics systems. We can then actually start to put forth, here's an ability to look at what we think you should be doing, not what you might be expecting, but what you should be doing from a software user perspective for your enterprise and for your customers. And that, I think, is the right way to lead that along. Here's a suggestion. We're going to show you how to implement it. We're going to measure the accuracy of that. Oh, and by the way, we're going to measure the accuracy of your responses as well and your performance in here, not just throughout the organization, but as individuals. Allow them to learn gradually the predictive nature and the predictive value of this.
Sounds like you're looking for AI machine learning to provide a foundation for continuous improvement over time.
Oh, absolutely. When you think about, and I don't know why or how you came up with the name Freddie for your smart chatbot there, but kudos. If you look
you should have taken 5%, you missed out.
So a lot of people think of chatbots still as, that little goofy Microsoft, paperclip bouncing around there as sort of a, hey, did you know you can do this? Sort of the Apple tips approach. But, AI in that environment, can be very complex, and it's not just something that can provide a suggestion, but it's something that can actually educate. I saw you doing this. Oh, you're doing this again? Here's a way that you can improve that process by watching how the user interacts and by watching how other users in the system interact for efficiencies that can be gained. So it's a continuously, evolving learning process for the SaaS solution users themselves, for the CRM users.
It sounds like Amazon for B2B business companies.
Oh,
that's a lot of buzzwords in one sentence.
Well, yeah, actually, that would be Alibaba.
Okay. We got time for one more question. Nathan, what do you think the future of AI is? And do you have any other follow-up questions for Fred?
Yeah, I'll do both of those things. When you look at the future of AI, I think the companies that are actually using real AI and machine learning to gain an advantage in the market don't want you to know that they're getting that advantage using AI and machine learning. So they'll be the quietest that they're actually using it. You'll never see it in their pitch deck. But their ARR growth will be through the roof because they're winning customers more effectively because of that on the back end. So Fred, my ending question to you is this. If you had $1 million to invest in any AI or machine learning company you've studied over the past year, which company would you go with and why?
Wow.
Can't be Freshworks.
Well, you guys are still a privately held company. So I can't do that. That's a really good question. And as a tech and equities analyst and having managed research operations for funds and investment firms in the past. I've learned a long time ago that I am not one to give stock recommendations or investment advice.
Oh, it's a political answer.
I am here.
Hey, hang up the Zoom call. Get out of here.
I start every podcast that I do with the phrase, "This podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only." I may talk about stocks, but please
let me rephrase this so you can be politically correct. If you were going to be hired into a company as head of AI and machine learning, right, and it had obviously you'd be working at the company, your name would be on it, then which company would you be most excited about joining? And again, the obvious answer is we've heard why you're so excited about Freshworks, but pick something else outside of the Freshworks ecosystem.
Boy, outside of the Freshworks ecosystem.
I mean, they already named a product after you, so.
Yeah. So something completely outside. So there's a company in the UK. It begins with a P and ends with an R, and they do data discovery and validation within your organization. No, it's not Palantir.
Okay.
But what they do is, I mean, here's a huge issue that organizations, and it actually plays a little bit into the CRM space here. One of the huge issues that we see repeatedly in organizations is shadow data and shadow applications, things that users have brought in because they had a need at a particular time that wasn't being met by IT or by their software tools that are out there. This particular company has a unique way of discovering data and basically valued assets within an organization, bringing them together so that you know what you have, and then you can secure and utilize that throughout your organizations. So that's kind of what I would look for. But as a generic, if I'm in the SaaS space here, I'm going to look for a company that has shown reasonable growth, is reasonably well funded, that is not obsessed with, but well aware of the realities of profitability in software, and has a software architecture and culture that allows you to actually innovate on a very rapid basis with features, with tools, and with service offerings for their customers. Because the speed of AI is one of those things, like most things, it's going to take longer for it to get here than we expect. But when it does, it's going to hit faster than we anticipate. So you've got to be in a mode where you can continuously learn, adapt, and basically have that level of business agility that allows you to take advantage of the technology.
So
guys,
without naming names, I think he gave you a path forward for making a decision around that AI.
Yeah, he's not ex politics, is he?
No.
Yeah, but that was Fred. It was a very good. You're a great researcher for that reason. Never pick a side, but explain the concepts.
How are we going to make the decision?
Yes. What's the process like?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So hey, a real quick question for you guys. How many different variations or definitions for AI can you come up with in 10 seconds?
Well, yeah,
because this was part of the survey, so artificial intelligence, artificial impact,
animated intelligence, automated intelligence.
You can't use intelligence. Can't use intelligence.
No intelligence.
No intelligence and no artificial.
Insight, inference, etc.
I'd say it's almost interesting.
Good. Well, Fred, thanks so much for joining us today. And with that, I think we got a few more minutes left.
Yeah, we'll wrap up. We'll wrap up with some good questions. But yeah, Fred, thanks again for making time. If you guys want to check out, if you're watching on Twitter and you want to check out the Freshworks report that I believe it was Fred, right? You guys worked with Fred and his firm on.
Fred helped us out actually and provided a quote for the press release.
We did some post data analysis.
Yes. There you go. Check that report out, guys, at fails, it's plural, force.com. Click the bar on the upper right. You'll see Freshworks AI report. And then for the next 8 or 9 minutes, what we will do is go on Twitter using the hashtag AskNathan. We'll answer any questions you have related to SaaS. And just to summarize what we've talked about today, I mean, we had Craig on from Natera, which seems like, Parker, was a great acquisition for Freshworks. That product is going live as Fresh Success in January, so look out for that, and really helps folks understand what cohorts of customers they should go target to drive reactivation, drive upsell revenue, and drive longer LTVs. Is that right?
Actually, also integrates Fresh Success into our suite of products. We're actually one of the first that we know of the CRM solutions that actually looks at customer engagement all the way from, first click to latest invoice, so that you have a common experience, contextual insight throughout the lifetime of that engagement. So a great acquisition. It's been something that we've been very, very happy with.
So Craig was back. You want to go watch the live stream and rewatch that segment. It was great. We then, after that, had David Thompson on, who's the CMO at Freshworks, told us the story of 1999 when he joined WebEx, helped that company grow, and then did his own thing at Genius, raised a bunch of money, $80 million, but ultimately sold it at only $10 million in revenue. No one got any money from it. That is sometimes what happens when you raise a lot of money in SaaS. Maybe we're seeing that again today in a frothy market. But David, very excited about how Freshworks is approaching kind of reinventing what used to be SaaS. There's old, slow legacy players now, and there's this fresh take on SaaS where you're closer to the customer, it's easier to implement, and it's much more innovative and faster moving. And then we just wrapped up with this great piece by Fred. And now, Parker, unless there's anything you want to add, we'll jump into some questions from Twitter.
Let's go to those questions.
All right. Actually, yeah, Fred, jump in.
That's a real quick one. I'll leave you with one closing thought here. Trends to watch in CRM for 2020. Number one trend is customer success. And the reason I say customer success is because despite the fact that for years we have been hearing from solution providers out there that they're all about customer success, I think 2020 is the point where we're actually able to take data from all these different silos, bring it together, analyze it, integrate it, sift it, sort through it, add additional data, and extract meaningful value that helps us drive ultimate customer success. So I think 2020 is the first year that we're really able to do that. And that's one of my top trends that I'm watching moving ahead. And with that, I'll sign out, guys.
We'll be watching that
Thanks,
too.
Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
All right, guys. So throwing it over to you guys on Twitter, @Harish017 said, Parker, Nathan, what's the most important entrepreneurial trait according to you?
This is Ask Nathan time, not Ask Parker time.
You're not going to let me throw it over to you, huh?
No.
All right. I would say this. I think the best entrepreneurs realize that nobody knows anything. And so you can go ask someone that just had a successful exit. They'll give you a bunch of advice. You go ask someone else that also just had a successful exit. They'll give you the exact opposite advice. So the key here is to understand what you're building, be a sponge and collect, but then selectively choose what you accept to make your decisions based off of. That's very important for any entrepreneur. The other question you had is, what does Nathan Latka see as the most important skill that entrepreneurs need to possess, right? So again, same thing here. I'm a fan of founders who are not specialists, they're generalists. Mm-hmm. I think it's way more powerful to be able to talk to generalists. So in other words, let me make that real. There's a lot of business founders watching right now who can't find a coder to develop your great genius business idea. And you might be thinking, I'm going to go learn to code. What's better to think about is, how do I position this idea to a developer who's very good at developing and get them excited enough to code it for me, for equity, for a little cash, etc. So focus on being a generalist to understanding how to motivate specialists.
Great. What else?
You agree with that?
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
I love it. All right. @MaryRick4602 said, Nathan, quick question. Can I start a SaaS business even if I don't have much capital? So the answer to this, in my opinion, is a resounding yes. I put my tax returns on page 6 for my first SaaS company in the book that I released, and you'll see there how I basically pre-sold $70,000 worth of the product just from an email. And so a lot of people will say, well, Nathan, that's not fair. You shouldn't sell something that you don't have. Well, the flip side is you spend 3 years developing, coding something, spend a fortune on it, and then no one wants to buy it. I'd much rather be the former than the latter. So the important thing is figure out a crystallized way to communicate your idea. And if you can't pre-sell that idea to people, there might not be a market for it anyway. Good question there, Mary. All right. Next one, Niraka says, how to think of fundraising and liquidation if you are a founder. So, always raise behind your revenue. The other thing that's becoming very trendy today there are essentially 6 ways any entrepreneur can raise capital for your business. I'm going to list them quickly in order of most expensive to least expensive. The most expensive way to a founder to raise money is to sell equity, right? To a traditional VC. You see this all over the place. The next most expensive is some form of convertible note. So you see this as a SAFE, right, invented by YC, or your traditional convertible note document. The third most expensive way is what's called an RBF, or revenue-based financing, where you can get a loan and you pay it back as a percent of your monthly recurring revenue. But the effective interest rate on that money can sometimes get up as high as 25%. The fourth most expensive way that you can raise capital as a founder is to do a strict term loan. And that means someone could loan you 3 to 6x of your current monthly recurring revenue. So if you're doing $100,000 a month, you could get $600,000 in debt. And they'll loan it to you at something between 13 to 16%, right? Depending on who you work with. And then lastly, the least expensive way to raise capital is to go work and do a traditional, deal with an SVB, right? A bank, which will loan you money at something between 3 and 6% and take very small portion of your equity, 0.2 to 0.5% typically. The trick is though, if you're a brand new founder, you can't typically go raise debt from SVB because you're too new. So you have to pick one of the other 5 options. But hopefully that gives you a good summary of a bunch of different ways to raise capital as a founder. A lot of people now are looking at debt. I encourage you guys to look at debt to get money to build your company because it doesn't take any equity. You get to keep it all. That also helps you control liquidation. When you raise venture capital, there's something called a liquidation preferences in your documents, which means the investors get their money back first. Sometimes it's 2x or a 3x liquidation preference. That's what happened with David, right, at his first company, where that 80 million he raised, there was a liquidation preference. So no one else saw any money because they sold for less than 80 million. So keep that in mind as a founder. Think of debt, avoid dilution.
Absolutely.
All right. Number 4, we've got a question here. How do I find out how much to charge for my SaaS products?
I think you talked about that earlier.
We did. Enough money to make you happy.
Or maybe a little bit of research.
And then double it.
Some testing.
Yeah, a lot of testing there. Go to Ask Nathan on Twitter. You guys will see the image I posted about how to come up with pricing. Good question there. Next question. What are the metrics to track a SaaS business at various stages of growth? I would say early on, get your first customer. Once you have a subset of 100 or so customers, focus on keeping them. After you focus on keeping them, figure out a way to upsell them. Only after you figure out how to get them, keep them, and upsell them, then focus on making top of funnel bigger and figure out how to go get more customers. That's step 4. Lastly, number 5, how can you get more customers at a cheaper CAC so your economics pan out over time? This is where you're in the 30 to 80 million bucks in terms of ARR rate. Once you get past 80 million bucks in ARR, it's about controlling your head count, controlling what you can do with one team member. Average ARR per employee at a publicly traded SaaS company right now is about $189,000 per employee. So if you want to calculate your own, take your total team size right now, maybe it's 1,000 people, take your total ARR, maybe it's 100 million. And you can then back into ARR per employee. So those are the things you want to measure, and rule of 40, you want to measure in the later terms of your growth. This might be a better question for you. I don't have a good opinion on this. This is customer experience, I believe, right?
Yes,
CX is
yes.
Customer experience the new marketing?
Well, I think so. I mean, if you look at it in terms of satisfying the customer, making sure that they're happy, and making sure that therefore that you do everything that your product becomes your marketing tool, and that you make sure that it's powerfully simple, it works, it's at an affordable price point. We looked at kind of the foundational things that we talk about in Indian democratic design, which looks at how do we develop products, how are products being developed in India, and the foundation around that is making sure that those customers are happy, looking at the end users, designing for the end users, to making sure that the products are simple, to making sure that the products are scalable, that they enable self-service. One of the things that you talked about, the long tail of SMB and how do you be successful at that? If you have a product that requires a lot of professional services, you're going to be burning up all your profits to serve those customers through professional services. If you have a product that's self-serving, that enables self-reliance, they can help themselves. Mm-hmm. And then you look at, obviously, quality. It needs to be super intuitive. It needs to have high value to it. And then it needs to be simply affordable. Yep. If you do that, then you're going to be successful. And that creates a very successful user experience. And then happy customers make sure that they're talking to their friends and they become great advocates for us. And that's the best form of marketing available.
Radhika, good question. I appreciate that. Next Twitter user, Devis Habits, HBITS, said, Nathan, getlatka.com is so cool. Where do you get all your intel from? And how do you go about building your SaaS network? So those of you that don't know, getlatka.com is essentially the site that I use to post all my podcast recordings. But I joke about this, Parker. I think I'm the most sued podcaster. because founders come on my show, I charm them, I tell them they look great. And then I say, okay, what's your valuation?
Then you go for the jugular.
What's your revenue? What's your CAC, churn, ARPU? And then what we do is we pull those data points out of the interview and put them in an Excel table at getlaka.com. So thanks for the compliment. That's how I get the data. I interview these SaaS founders.
Let's take maybe one more here.
Yeah, one more. Yeah, we only got 2 left here. So the next one is PLS asked, business models are dynamic. What new business models await entering the world? I'm seeing 3 trends in this related to SaaS. There's a lot of people that are taking SaaS plus marketplace revenue. Sometimes they build a marketplace first and they're taking a transaction fee on goods sold through the marketplace, and then they add SaaS on the back end. An example of that would be Printful.com, 80 million in revenue through the marketplace. They're now adding a essentially shopper SaaS tool for the e-commerce brands. The other trend I'm seeing is IoT plus SaaS, or Internet of Things plus SaaS. And so there's a lot of companies like that will sell a little device to farmers to put in grain boxes to measure when the cow feed is low, which auto triggers the delivery person of the cow feed to show up next Tuesday. It's all automated. And then they sell a subscription fee on top of that. The net revenue retention in those IoT plus SaaS plays, I've seen it be 150, 160%. Massive, because they already invested in the hardware. And the last trend I'm seeing is SaaS plus processing fees. Infusionsoft and a lot of these companies went through a lot of trouble. Infusionsoft tried to do a deal, they couldn't get a deal done, and they had to pivot where they were handling so much transaction volume for SMBs. They started taking 1% of each transaction through the platform and making a lot of money there. So those are the 3 models, Parker, that I'm seeing coming onto the SaaS stage.
Awesome. And what's our final question here, Nathan?
Last one, which business model should a SaaS business prefer, vertical or horizontal? I don't have a strong opinion here. I've seen success on both.
I say whatever works for you, right?
Whatever works for you guys. Speaking of what's working, we are here. You joined us live for 2 hours at Dreamforce on the ground at Freshworks HQ. We're talking to people. We've got pop-up stands all over the place. And the trends we're hearing people say are, Nathan, Parker, we want to move quicker. We want software that does more, that doesn't cost a fortune, that I don't have to hire consultants for. The legacy stuff is getting harder and harder to use.
Please make it simple.
Make it simple.
Make it simple,
right?
so that we can help ourselves.
Make it simple. So these are the things that are happening. We'll be discussing all day long at #Failsforce on Twitter, #SaaSWars, and be sure to tag us at Freshworks, and it'll say Freshworks Inc. Parker, we talked to a lot of fun people today. Do you want to sum them all up real quick?
We did. And well, all I will say is thanks for joining us, Nathan.
Of course.
Great to have you on board today.
It was fun.
We look forward to more of that. And thanks to everybody out there for joining us as well. We'll be continuing the conversation on Twitter and all our social channels. And we'll see you live tomorrow as we continue the conversation right here at SaaSwars.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Failsforce.com, #SaaSwars. Guys, Parker and I are out.
Get the hashtags in there. Thanks, Nathan.
Thanks, Parker. And this is the behind the scenes stuff where people are like, wait, the credits are rolling now. Are they going to reveal anything like salacious that they didn't say live? You're getting nothing. You're going to get nothing from us.